think it's a thing where as you get older, it's like these things. It's never in your mind. I feel like it wasn't never in my mind in my 20s talking about mental health. Or maybe it's because it's more of a newer thing. Yeah, it's tired. Fine. I think it's maybe like it's a newer thing where it's people are more aware, or I feel like it's a bit of a taboo topic with black people and growing up in black homes even.
Well, I think that we talk about health, and we've done episodes obviously on health and like wellness, and we tend to kind of always think of health in the sense of like what you eat and if you exercise and whether you're overweight
what
or
things you can see.
the things you can see. But I don't think that a lot of people, and I think there's also like a bit of a stigma with mental health that if you're mentally unhealthy, then like Granny would always say, you're mad. You know.
Well, I think that was like our generation. You know, there wasn't so much emphasis on mental health. Mental health was, you know, like the word was, you're mad.
Or even with Granny with her dementia, she won't accept it because of the fact that she associates that with madness.
Well, this is the thing.
Like
the old school.
Like you're mad in your head?
Yeah. I mean,
there's no in between of...
No, because there wasn't that divide. It was that extreme. So you regarded mental health as the people that's walking down the road talking to themselves, like, and people that are actually, you know, just like this mentally other person. They were scary, they were dangerous. It was that extreme. And you know, back in the day you had these mental health institutions, so when somebody was diagnosed with mental health, it was that severe case, and then they were put in an institution and locked away from society. So you never really saw them.
Like a stigma to it, wasn't it?
So you just saw that as something that was extreme. You didn't see it as something today where it's really everyone has a pressure level that, you know, there's a ceiling that everyone, I think, is something that if everyone's honest, probably has that opportunity or experience, even if it's the thought of going through things. And I know certain things in your life, you open, that doors open, maybe it's pressure. I think for me, there was a time when we were in school, and I think, you know, messing around with Ouija boards and occultic stuff, you know.
For real, I never even crossed my mind to touch some things.
Well, it was just boredom, and it was just, you know,
iPad.
Well, we didn't have iPads, so we had all this free time in school, and it was meant to be like study time, but you know, you studied, so it was no supervision. And I guess this is where we don't even realize it goes right back to when you're kids. And we were like 15 years old. But yeah, we were around 15 years old, and just opening doors because we were bored. And then we found that it just brought the other things into our lives that we couldn't handle. And I remember having those, you know, those thoughts. And sometimes, you know, I'm sure some people can probably relate, where you even like sometimes, you know, standing on the high building, you hear a voice tell you jump, or you hear voices, and you just dismiss that as a thought that probably flashed into your mind, and not giving it any...
What would happen if I jumped? Or like some
but I think as well, like mental health can also be paired right back to even just day to day. You know, like I know for me, being a mom, being a wife, balancing all those things, like you can be in a place where you're not mentally healthy. You know, you're not
looking after yourself.
You're not looking after yourself. And so I think we kind of tend to think
it's not even sometimes even not looking after yourself. I think that feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Just, and I think
it
doesn't necessarily mean like if I'm suffering with if I'm unhealthy mentally, it doesn't necessarily always lead to depression or suicide. I mean, we'll talk about that, we'll unbox that side of it. And then obviously insanity. There's so many different aspects of mental health that I think we need to start the conversation about, because I know for a lot of women and mothers, that's really the conversation that happens quite a lot. And the way that it will be spoken about isn't in the sense of I'm not mentally doing well. It's more like, oh, I'm tired. You know, I'm so tired. I'm tired all the time. Yeah. But actually, when we strip it back, it's where mentally I haven't been in a good space for a while, you know, and for a lot of women at home with the kids, you're not having those conversations. I remember even when I was living in Australia, obviously I had no family there, I had no friends, and then there was a time difference. So when there was a time where my family was all asleep, there was no one to talk to, and I didn't have any friends. And then Jason was working away, and I remember once I'd put the kids down, it was just silence, like absolute silence. There was, and you hadn't spoken to anyone for pretty much the whole day other than your kids, because you were because my husband, you couldn't get hold of him, he was on a rig. So that starts to play a role, and that's when I feel like then you start feeling like that discouragement and that depression or whatever. And even like with my daughter Kayla, when she was born 6.5 weeks premature, and I didn't really know anything about postnatal depression. I don't think most people speak about it. But now looking back, I 100% feel like I had that, because it's like my body and my brain were not aligned. So this baby was here, but it's like I knew mentally she was here, but nothing else about me almost like recognized it. So in my, I don't know where, like it's like it felt like I was still carrying her, like I'd still touch my stomach, I'd still do all of that, and there was like almost like a detachment between me and Kayla, because I knew she was my kid, like I knew she was my baby, but then I didn't know she was my baby. And so then when she'd be crying in the night and stuff, it's like I wasn't ready for that yet.
That
like
urgency to go get her and things.
Yeah, like I was like, and then I remember one night where she was crying and I was like, stop. And then Jason, like, I think he knew, okay,
she's not coping.
She's not okay. And it wasn't like a normal, like, she's tired. Like, it was where I was literally like not coping. And he came and he said, go to bed, I'll take her. And so I think that we don't have enough conversations around that. Women literally are pregnant for 9 months or 8 months or 7 months in my case, and then bam, you're thrown into this world that most of us don't know anything about. And I think there's a stigma around that with women as well, where if I'm not this glowing mom, then you're a bad mom, you know. 100%. And so
well, I think it's the overwhelming of oftentimes, you know, you get married and there's not many places that actually tells you step by step, this is the responsibility. So you've gone from this carefree individual to maybe not having a great amount of responsibility. Then you're thrust into this role. Now you're somebody's wife, or in the case, somebody's husband, and then children come along, and bam, 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 the pressure stacks up. And, you know, mentally, that's a lot to handle. And you're put into this place where there is no real escape, because you can't leave and come back. You can't say, 100%. I need to step out for a minute and just find a space. It's just there. It's there every day. You wake up, you go to sleep, it's there, and there's no escape. And I mean, for me, I think one of the things I would say to people, as much as you can, find some escape, find some time to just, even if it's just for a few hours, to find some time, have a community around you, try and build a community.
I think that the danger is that when you start feeling like you're not doing well mentally, you retreat, and all you want to do is be by yourself.
Like a natural instinct.
It's a natural instinct to pull away. And so for me, like when I started feeling like that with Kayla, I was like, okay, I've got a choice to make. And I had someone that had come out of being unhealthy mentally and coming from that background. I recognized it. So I knew that I had to fight my way out of it. And so for me, it was something as simple as joining my local mums group. you know, it was one thing a week that I could look forward to, where I could talk to people, where I could be around other people, you know, ask questions or whatever. And that's what I would say. Like, I think that there's got to be a step to like be free of it. And for me, I found that isolation is the worst thing when you're struggling with your mental health.
But people like to put on this brave face, you know, because it feels like, you know, to say I'm going through this is to admit. In our minds, we think, am I admitting to failure? Am I admitting to being weak? And no one wants to portray that. So we tend to put on, you know, like there's a video you just showed me, and it was the guy that was the loudest, the most outgoing, because you put on this
you were
front.
telling me about it. Why don't you say what that video is?
Yeah, basically it's I think it's had like,
it was men's mental health.
10 million views in like 7 days or something. But it's like where two guys, English guys, older, probably about in their 50s, 60s, they go to football games together all the time. And there's one that's just really quiet in himself, doesn't celebrate when the goals are scored or anything. The other one's like really loud, like, yeah, like, ooh, like jumping up and down. And it shows them at like game after game, sitting in the same seats together. And then one day they come, and the quiet one's the one that's sitting there bringing his friend's like jersey and putting it on the chair. The loudest one's the one that took his own life, because the whole time everyone's looking at the one that's quiet, thinking, oh, you know, he's one suffering from mental health, but it's not always the obvious, you know.
And I think that's really key. Like, I don't think that a lack of mental health necessarily has a face or a look about it. And I love what you told me the other day, Dom, about what you did when you went out with your friends.
Yeah, and even talking about that, I'll say that what we done in a minute, but it's like, I feel like in my growing up, only maybe my late 20s is when I really became aware of mental health. Yeah. I feel like throughout life, you didn't know what to call it or what it was, if you're feeling depressed about things or who to talk. You know, some people say you see therapists and stuff. Like in our culture, that wasn't really you know, you go chat to other people about your business, and it's when the way they tell you things. It's like
there's also the cost factor as well.
Yeah, obviously the cost and things like that, but sometimes it's worth that for your mental health or where you could end up. So there's a lot of people that probably killed themselves because they don't have that. Yeah. Or they were deterred from that from family and things like that. But we just met up. Me and two of my friends. We just met up for like food, and they went like putt shack, little golfing thing. But first thing, we sat down, we got food, and it was like how's everyone's mental health? Like, how's everyone doing? And just had honest conversations, and we've never done it before, but it's a thing now where everyone's older, everyone's got the real life situations. You know, there's things that you might not be where you want to be in life, or you're going through this and that. Everyone's in different scenarios and situations, but it's creating that safe space for people to be like, yeah, this is going on, or even saying it out loud sometimes can.
And I love that. I love that for men.
Because and it's men, especially men don't.
Yeah, men don't talk. Even with my husband, I'm like, talk to me.
Yeah.
like say,
but
what
men,
is it?
It's
what
the hardest thing. I don't know what it is, but for men to even talk to their I don't know if they think it's not relatable, or they might come across weak, or I don't know. All men have different reasons. It might be that
coming across as,
but I think
not being strong.
Yeah, but having a conversation with another man. Yeah. That you like even just I think I told you about the situation with my friend asked for money where he needed money, and he actually just messaged. Like, that's a big step to even step out and ask and show yourself like, we're not in a good place, like we really need your help. Like the ego of a man is like, even when I read that, I was like,
what it is. It's the ego.
For me to do that, I would have to be in such a place where it's like, I have no other option. Even then, it's like, I don't know, I'll like go look for some quick loan or some silliness that'll put us in more debt. Yeah. But it's like, I respected that so much, because men just that opened that space as well for us to have a conversation about like, like we're not in a like the best situation where I can just be like, here's however much you need. Yeah. But it's like, no one talks about, men don't talk about that, and none of them will speak to their wives about it. So having that space for men to talk I think is a very important thing.
And I think that if you think about how men, even as children, and maybe this is something that I'm even thinking about Ezra now, and how I can maybe change what that looks like, if we think about how they grow up, girls very much grow up just playing and talking to each other,
and
you
it's
know,
normal for
and
their
it's normal
girls
for them
to be
like keep
emotional.
being emotional.
Because even like with Case, we say he's the emotional one.
Yeah, but it is a good thing in a sense as well, because he's open to expressing himself.
Yeah.
Which
but
is a
then
very
I
hard
think
thing as a
that
man as he grows up.
we kind of have a society where if a boy does cry or if a boy is too whingy or moany, we tell them off, like, come on, stop it, you know, like, behave yourself, like, whatever. Whereas almost like there's an expectation, oh, it's a girl, like, you know, she needs a hug, she needs a cuddle, whatever. But I think that with boys, I think then as they grow up, the way that they choose to bond is through sports or activities, which you don't really need to. Whereas with girls, the things that they bond over is like dinners and things where they talk, you know. And so, you know, for a lot of women, not all women, but for a lot of women, you know, when you're going for something, you call your girlfriend, you call your best friend, whatever. Whereas I think for guys, like you said, it's just not the norm. And I think that it would be so powerful if what you done with your friends became the norm.
Became a norm where men could create that. I don't know if you remember the story years ago in this country, and it was this wealthy family. There was the husband, the wife,
where he shot
and
his wife
one
and
daughter. And, you know, when it came out on the media, the house had burnt down, the garage had burnt down, the vehicles were all burnt to a skeleton, the animals were all dead. And so the media ran the story as if this was like a gang, something, you know, somebody'd come in and done that to them. And it wasn't until they retrieved some of the footage from the property that they saw that it was him, the husband. They'd been at a barbecue during the day, no sign of what was going on with him. There was no sign. I mean, it came out that it was financial. And so his way of dealing with that pressure was to kill his daughter, murder his wife. He shot the dogs, he shot the horses, he set he literally burned and destroyed everything. And that had to been building up, and no one saw that. He was amongst people that day, but you know, that something was wrong obviously wasn't picked up by everyone that he was around. And I think it's so healthy if we can create more groups where men, one of the first things that they should do when they're with their buddies is, how's your mental health? You know, guys get together and it's like a video game. It's like some activity, some sport that detracts from the person.
Which we done as well. But first thing we done is sat down, have just honest conversation. But it's like, you have to create that space as well. You can't just go into it and be like, some people, you know, some guys will be just like, they won't take it serious. I feel like you have to be on the same page in a sense. So it is hard to navigate how to do this, but because most guys will see it like, oh, are you, man, you're right. Even though I was saying Sarah earlier, it's like you already put it out like you're right. You don't want to hear subliminally, you don't want to hear what you're really feeling. Well, you're right, mate. It's already a positive where it's already like,
and what's the response?
Unless he really like wants to say, and he's like, actually I'm not. Like that's and that might be where he's on a breaking point and he has to say something, but not most people will mask it.
I think we all are guilty of that. Like, how are you? But we're not really asking,
we don't
how
tell
are
the
you?
truth.
It's almost like saying,
you're not really waiting to hear.
Exactly. And I've started recently actually phoning my friends and being like, how are you?
Like, seriously,
you know, like, how are you? Like, are you good? You know, and then, you know, and I think it's being even sensitive. Like, I had one of my friends call me the other day. I was in the hairdresser, I was busy, like I was in the middle of doing something, and she was like, are you free? And I was like, oh, I'm just in the middle of doing my hair. And she's like, oh, okay, fine, no, it's fine. And I was like, no, and I knew there was something wrong. And so I was like, I like sat up, I paid attention, and I was like, no, I'm free. And then she burst out crying, and it was where she was just not in a good place mentally, and she was in tears and she was sobbing, and obviously by that time the conversation ended, she felt so much better. She just needed someone to talk to. And I think sometimes when you're struggling with your mental health, you just need someone that will listen, not necessarily give a solution, not necessarily give you like a 5-step plan, but like actually just talk to you or whatever. And I'm so glad that in that moment I stopped in my busyness and was sensitive. And I think that we really need to be aware of those people that surround us, you know, even our siblings, our friends, the people that you think are good. Like, actually, are they good? Like, are they really good?
You shouldn't presume anyone's good.
Yeah.
I think, because
Well,
you can't tell.
I think the world that we live in today, we can't.
Even the way, just the economy that we live in, people are struggling.
Yeah.
Like, people are actually like holding on by a thread, and it's like, other people might be doing better, like then, but it's like checking in what people you know, actually
don't know
coping.
even, you know, without the economy, you don't know what people's home life is like.
Exactly.
So people are dealing with things on their own. It could be that they're in a negative relationship. There could be abuse.
It's in the same house.
You're in a home that maybe you're getting negative from your spouse or your partner. You're getting a negative, there's no affection, there's no love there. So people got this negative environment, and then maybe at work it's a negative environment, and you're back and forward in this space, and there's no one that you can sit down and talk to. And I think, you know, even for people watching the program right now, I'd say, because this is making me think, you know, because I know one of my friends, her husband, has been diagnosed with cancer, and this has made me think, let me check on her, because she's now having to carry that, and the worry that may be associated with that. And we don't often think about, you know, when somebody has a sick person in their lives, whether it's a child, whether it's a spouse, how are you coping with that? Yes, that person, you know, we focus on the person that's sick, but we don't focus on the person that's caring for them. And it's a person that's caring for them that's carrying all the worry. Because, you know, if you've got a sick spouse, especially if there's been a diagnosis of cancer, they're worried. They're afraid. They're suppressing all of this negative. We're pushing it down, pushing it back down. It's trying to come up. It's like
a volcano.
What if they're going to die? I don't want to hear that, so I push it down. And eventually, it comes up and that breakdown happens.
But I think as well, like, it's understanding that it can be the smallest thing that triggers, that breaks the straw. I know for me, when I was really at my lowest and like really in that really hole of depression, it was literally one thing that broke everything, and it was the smallest thing. So I had been struggling with my mental health for ages. I had a relationship that didn't work. I was living in a place that I couldn't really afford because it wasn't supposed to just be me living there. There was a lot of stuff happening with our family and a lot of stuff going on. And then obviously finances started catching up. And then I remember, like, it was like almost like sandwiching. And then I remember, like, I went into McDonald's and I had to ask, I don't know if you've ever had to ask the price. If you are at McDonald's and you have to ask the price of anything, you're not in a good space financially. And I remember I asked for the price of the smallest chips, and I didn't have enough money. And I think it was that small thing
that broke. That
was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, it was literally, I couldn't afford the small fries from McDonald's that I don't even want to eat. Like, do you know what I mean? And it was that small thing that I think, if I'm looking back now, I was just trying to remember while you lot were talking, what was it that finally broke? And for me, as someone that did go down that road where I wanted to take my own life, I have so much empathy for people that do, because never at any point did I see it as me taking my own life. Like, never. Like, I never saw it as suicide. Does that make sense? And I think a lot of people, if you could come back and speak to you, because some people are like, how can they be so selfish? They left behind their daughter, they left behind their wife, like whatever. It's no reflection on the people you love.
It's nothing to do with
it's nothing to do with them. And in that moment, because like I remember it feeling loud, like it was almost like deafening, like you just wanted, if you've ever been in like a really noisy space and you just want it to stop, that's what it feels like. And I remember, like, it just felt so loud all the time. And then and I was a Christian. I loved God. So it's not even like, you know, there's a lot of like Christians that will say, oh, you're not godly, or you know, oh, you know, you're going to go to hell, whatever, all of that stuff. For me, it wasn't even that. It was that I actually, ironically, I just wanted to be where he was. That was my rationale. I was like, I know you're a safe space. I know where you live, and it's not here, like it's in heaven. I just want to go there because there's peace. There's like, and I know now that was a lie, but in that moment, that's what I felt.
But sometimes that's not even the rationale, because when I think back to before I became a Christian, you know, it was not coping with the pressure and the problems in our marriage, because, you know, before we got saved, we had a lot of problems in our marriage. And I remember thinking, you know, everything would be better if I wasn't here.
Yeah.
And you feel like, well, you know, I'm not needed, I won't be missed. And, you know, what's the point? I might as well, you know, just leave. And I was in a really, really dark place. And I think, you know, as well, sometimes things are spiritual. It's not always just the fact, because I mentioned earlier on that we got involved in messing with Ouija boards and occultic stuff. We didn't understand what we were doing. And I think that opened certain doors. I remember there's a story you were telling me about a father who made a deal for wealth. But in that space, I remember my father-in-law, my in-laws had stayed with us for a while, and he was on different medications. And I remember all his tablets were still in the bathroom cabinet, and I was on my own in the house, and I just took the whole lot, all of his concoctions. I mixed it all up, washed it down, and I lay down. I was waiting to die. And I remember your dad coming home, and he's like, "What have you done?" Because I was just like floppy. And I wouldn't tell him. I didn't tell him what I'd done. I didn't tell him that what I'd taken, because I know he would have tried to get me to the hospital. I actually really wanted to go, and I just wanted out. I didn't see a way for life to be better. And some people get like that. It's like, I can't see this getting any better. And for me, I just wanted to check out. So I didn't tell him what I'd taken. I remember saying, because I think he saw some bottles, I said, I just took a couple of aspirins, but I'd literally took all his dad's medication. And I remember, I believe God had his hand on me, because I should have died, because the amount of tablets I'd taken and the mixture. And I can't remember if I even washed it down with some alcohol just to make it all work, and it didn't work. And I remember I felt sleepy, and I came back around, and I remember I'd lost all my sense of taste and smell. For years, I couldn't taste anything because I'd damaged my body from what I'd done. But it's a real thing where people want that escape, because I can't cope. And sometimes, you know, the devil makes you feel like everyone's better off without me. You know, I've not, you know, no one will miss me. No one needs me. And so, you know, there's many different aspects that people come into that space with. It could be the circumstances you're in. It could be that you just feel like, what's the point?
It's the overwhelming feeling of just wanting to leave. Just not to be here anymore.
Well, there's some scary statistics that we got in the group. It says over 700,000 people take their own lives each year. That's nearly 1 million people. That's one person every 40 seconds, even while this broadcast is going on, are taking their lives. It says 115 people die by suicide in the UK every week, with 75% of those deaths being men. So again, there's that need for men to find that space to talk. It says 1 in 5 people have suicidal thoughts. So it's a common thing that we're addressing here. 1 in 14 people self-harm. Again, that's a road that's taking you down. And, you know, I think what we need to, people need to realize is that when those thoughts begin, don't wait for them to escalate up here before we look for help or seek for help. I think the more those thoughts begin to come, the more you need to find somebody that you can open up to, somebody that you can talk to, because those thoughts, when we keep them internal and no one knows what's going on, there's no one to give you the balance, because the thoughts are tipping one way. When you talk to somebody, it brings perspective, and I think when you're left to ourselves, the perspective goes wrong. But when we open ourselves up and trust somebody and let them in, and I think that's the key, to let somebody in. Find someone you can trust and let somebody in, because I think a lot of these things, what you're going through, I know like with a lot of young people today, with the pressure of exams and studying, there's such a high rise in young people wanting to commit suicide today. Again, pressure. But, you know, surely in those colleges, universities, there should be, I think as important as it is to have lecturers, should be somebody that psychologically, that those young people can go
therapy
to.
on campus.
There should be therapy on campus.
There is, but I mean, like, it's like there is in schools, there is in universities, but it's not.
I think it's how it's presented.
Yeah,
like
it's
someone
not.
said this to me on Sunday. Was it Sunday? I think I was talking with somebody, and they say the problem with a lot of these therapists is that they focus on the inward, and they don't ever take you outwards. So they don't bring you out. So they let you talk and talk and talk, but it's all in here. Yeah. But they don't actually bring you out and give you solutions and give you that hope.
It depends on the counsellor you see, because the counsellors that I've spoken to and the ones that I have,
but they're Christian counsellors or they're secular?
I've done both. I would definitely recommend, if you're a Christian, to see a Christian counsellor. But I think that's the first thing that's a really good point, that there's some. They're just like hairdressers. There's some that are really good, and there's some that are not.
Yeah, you've got to find
barbers,
the right
there's some that are good, and there's some that's not. Therapists are exactly the same. You know, not everybody is a good therapist. Not everybody is a good counsellor. I'm a huge advocate for counselling. I think that there's something so freeing about being able to just say. I think that we've been so programmed, especially in Black culture, you know, you're very programmed as to what you're allowed to say, what you're not allowed to say. Don't chat my business, like Dominic said, whatever. So I think that what counselling does...
Can we talk on that for a moment? Because that's such a taboo thing. I know of a lot of young people, and it's that older age group, the parent age group, that's saying, don't chat our business.
No, I think as well, though, I kind of understand it, like, even with my kids, because... also, we are a culture of honor. Do you get what I mean? So you're not going to be running rampant around people's house. You're not going to be.
I don't mean it like that.
No, but that's where it comes from.
Yeah.
You know, where you will respect. You respect this home. You represent us, and that's very prevalent. You know, the reason why most Black parents will beat you if you get caught with a boy or whatever is because you're representing them. You know, you go home pregnant, whatever. It's a shame on them. So it's very much filtered down.
There's also that other side where they want to present this perfect. You know, I'm going back to like our parents' age group. Your dad's parents' age group, and it was more about, which hence, like, you know, don't take the biscuit that's offered you when you go to people's house, don't take the drink, because we don't want to look like we don't feed you, or we don't want to look like our family's got any problems. So I think it's more than the honor part. I think it's that they want to present this front that's not actually the truth of what's behind.
I think there's two parts of it. I think there's that part, but I think that what I'm trying to say as well is, even with this generation, I know that also, you know, our kids, if they speak out of turn, I think that we've got to be very careful of that line where they're being rude and they're being disrespectful, but where we're also giving them a space to express themselves. And I think that part has to be really intentional, because I'm just thinking about, as we're talking about my own kids, like, they can't just, if they chat back or whatever, I'm like, who are you talking to? I'm not your friend. Does that make sense? But then I'm just thinking now, like, is there a better way to get the respect but then also give the space of, like, okay, you're obviously frustrated, what is it? That's not
from
that's not our culture. That's not our culture. That's my husband's culture. I don't even know if they do that either. But
it's finding the balance.
It's finding the balance.
It's taking what you know that you benefited from, and sort of filtering the things that were toxic that you look back at now and think that didn't help me in at all.
Yeah.
I watched a show on Netflix as well. It's about a Black Caribbean family in the UK.
Yeah.
The dad's not. He's in their life, but he's not with the mum and things like that. And the boy's a musician, and he has a situation where he's a bit emotional about something, and their surname's Champion. So the dad's very proud man about their name. So the boy's going through something, and he goes in the boy's name and says, "You're a champion name. You represent the champion name. You know, champion men don't cry. Champion men don't." So it's like you're literally putting what you perceive your name to be or represent.
Yeah.
On forget what you're feeling. Forget what you're going through right now.
Yeah.
What other people see around you represents me.
Yeah.
So I think that, and that just reminded me of it's Caribbean as well.
Yeah.
And it's just. It's very familiar to what you see and you know about that black culture in terms of you represent my name, or a name is put ahead of what you're going through. You know
and
I
mean? think what Mum's saying as well is like there's a accumulation of all of these different things because then there's also don't chat my business, and then but then also there's a culture where I believe the generation before you, or even maybe your generation, also didn't talk to their kids. So stuff will be happening. I see this where like there's a parent, I've known people where their parents sick and they don't know till their parents dead.
I know.
Then they find out that they had cancer.
We've had a few instances where we've had to inform children that by the way, your mum died while you're at school today. And they
didn't know anything, they were even sick to begin with.
It. And it goes all the way back because I remember even like, you know, for us, we didn't even, our parents never discussed with us, oh, by the way, we're moving, you won't see us from tomorrow because we've moved
for a few years.
For a few years.
I can't imagine doing that though. Can you imagine that? So, like,
even if we're going away next year.
I think that's so bizarre.
I'm like, who's going to watch the kids?
You know, like to go cinema.
There was no...
They clean left the country.
There was no conversation. I don't know when you're coming either. There was... It's like, where's... Because I remember your dad saying, he asked, where's my dad? Where's my mom? Where are they? Where are they? They're gone to England.
You live with
Where's
me now.
England? I've never heard of England. No one's ever discussed England. We're small. We don't know anything outside of the area that we live in. And I remember waking up and your parents are gone. They didn't even kiss you bye.
Wow.
There was no hugs. There was no bye. They just weren't there anymore. And then waking up to a grandmother that didn't like you and was abusive to you. So from a little age, you're dealing with stuff and no one communicated nothing to you. And there was no explanation. And I know they must have been gone a long time because I didn't even remember my father.
Wow.
When I first saw him, I was scared of him. You know, I remember him trying to get me to come to him and he was bribing me with Smarties. I'll never forget that. Trying to get me to come because I just barely remembered my mum. And I guess the reason was she didn't go with same time as him. Yeah. So he went first for however long.
How old was you at these times?
I don't know when he went.
Now, how old were you when you saw him again?
I was 6 going on 7.
Wow, that's... Thinking about how Luca's Luca's 4 now, so thinking about not being there in 3 years of his, when he's 6 and I've not been there for 3 4 years.
It would change your relationship dramatically.
Completely.
And it never really recovered.
But I think that for me, that's a lot. Like I can't even let my kids go anywhere. Like,
well, immediately that created an environment where you couldn't talk to them anyway. Because now, as a 7-year-old, I'm now trying to build a relationship with this man that I don't know. And you're not encouraged in black culture to voice your opinion or your thoughts. You know, you don't even dare show on your face any kind of disagreement with whatever rules that they've said. So you're raised in a way, you internalize everything. And, you know, we just didn't talk. I remember years after, you know, when we were growing up, I think we were all sitting at my parents' house and my brothers were there. And my second brother, I remember asking him at that time, you know, why didn't you back me up when I wanted to go out and my parents were like threatening to beat me? And, you know, we never had that, even had that conversation. It was only when we were growing up I was able to say to him, why didn't you back me up? And then to find out that he was too scared of them. He wanted to go out as well, but he saw the beatings that I got for going out. So but he became such an introvert under that, whereas I was the other extreme. It's like, okay, I'll deal with the punishment, but I'm just going to go and enjoy life. Whereas he was like, I'm intimidated by everything in my environment. So he's introverted, which again, you know, like what you're saying about men. So he never talks, which is like frustrating.
I was like that as well.
Yeah, he just didn't
having
talk.
3 older sisters. It's like, you know, I was always, I felt silence at times, but it's like, but that has affected me even till as an adult.
But why did you feel silence? Because they were so loud.
No, but until even where I felt like I couldn't speak. I think that just generally how I was. Danny's 6 years older than me. So there's always a detachment in a sense of relatability and what you're going through is at different times. Plus, male and female, it's different things.
Yeah.
So I never felt like I had someone that I could talk to in that sense or relate to. I didn't have any brothers or you know, so anyone close to me. So I was always an introvert. In school, I was an introvert. I was one of the only black kids in my school. So everything was always like, no one can relate to the things I'm going through in a sense. So I feel like as I got to older, now I'm married and my wife's like, you know, there's things you don't say things or you don't share things, and it's just that's how I've been my whole life. So it's hard to. I've got to literally go back, undo everything intentionally say things, and it's hard doing that as an adult now when that's 30 plus years. That's how I've lived life. You know, I've always been an introvert or keep internalized things. But
it can be unlearned though.
Yeah, it can, and it's just something you work on day in and day out, you know, because it can affect things like transparency in marriage or things like that, and not even just mental health, but even just things of what you seem normal and what they seem to be normal. It's completely different things. It's like that might be normal to you. Your family might have grown up and you can call your parents and say whatever or talk about whatever. Like when you grow up in you're the only boy child and you got Christian parents and that are pastors. It's like we never felt like we could just say anything. You know, some things I hear like these talk to like mum about. We could never just call our parents and just say that. I don't know if we could, but we just never even tried to do those things. You know, but it's just how you grow up, and then all those things affect you in life later. But I want to ask you, do you think your parents loved you the same, like this love the same as how we love our kids now? Do you think after, because I know I could never leave my kids
and did it affect
alone.
The way that you loved your kids?
I think for me, we tried to love you guys different to the way we were because we weren't shown affection.
Made you change? So what was you not shown that you tried to give us?
Well, we tried to be open and to be more affectionate.
So these are things you craved as.
Yeah, because we weren't ever hugged. You know, you were told.
But that's what I'm saying. Like,
Jason says that, and I'm like he was never hugged, and he was never told that he was loved.
I could not imagine. And
I'm like, what did your mum do with you then? I let you just hold us all the time.
But they just go through this whole. They worked. They were parents.
Yeah, but then when you get home, like how
nothing.
can you?
The best feeling is when I open my door.
Yeah.
And they're like, Daddy.
Well, we didn't.
I dropped my stuff. I go kiss them and hugged my kids.
We never had that.
I see how their day was.
So that's all I do with Israel. Like literally,
it was just this disciplinarian. It was more of a disciplinarian environment.
But I guess that's a reflection of how they grew up as well.
I don't know, because they don't. You know, they didn't really talk about it. I don't know what that
coming
was.
From like the slavery era of
maybe
probably because if you think about it, children were taken from their parents all the time.
That detachment.
And then also, even when
I
they
think
were
that
with
was the
their
thing,
parents, they were
taken.
never allowed to just be
like a family.
like a family.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
So even like
probably,
those early
And
years
wars
where
and
we
things like
were,
that.
most people would today, I wouldn't dream. I mean, there's no time of having you guys that we would dream of being separated from you lot for any length of time. But they were, you know, in their mind, they were trying to build a better life for us. So they left us at a really young age and leave you with people that are not showing you no affection. People that are abusive, supposedly family, but they're abusive.
No FaceTime, no phone call.
Nothing.
I mean,
I remember a
leave
doll. I remember a doll being sent for me. You know, so there was gestures like that where a doll was sent for me, but my grandmother locked it away in this chest, so I was never allowed to play with it. And even when we come over, I was thinking about this the other day. I mean, whether they did or not, I do not remember from being in this country one time having my birthday celebrated. I don't remember a cake or a party, nothing, or even a present. The only I remember a Christmas present. We got 2 presents at Christmas each, but I don't remember anything. I don't remember hugs. I don't remember affection. I remember my dad would leave when we were on school holidays. Before he went to work, he would leave us like a sheet of paper with maths on it, and we had to do it. I remember lots of beatings. I remember discipline. But the affection, I guess they didn't know how to. Some people don't know how. You know, even today, there are men that will go to your dad and say, "I don't know how to show affection. I don't know how to be affectionate to my wife."
I know when I got married to my husband, he obviously didn't grow up with any form of affection. I actually really feel like he should see a counsellor about that. And I remember when I'd hug him, he'd like literally just go like an ironing board, like, what are you doing?
I struggled for a long time to respond to. Well, your dad's more affectionate, I feel, but it was a long time for me, because it was certain things were made to me to, in my mind, was made to feel like it was wrong. So the way my parents were, they didn't hug each other, which is one of the reasons we said we don't want to do that. We're going to show affection in front of our kids, because they didn't show that to each other. So when that plays out in my marriage now, I'm like that bored. You know, your dad's trying to be affectionate, and especially in public, you know, because it was like everything. I remember even to this day, my mum said, "You don't walk down the road eating food."
Yeah, you taught us that as well.
I know, but I got that
every time I go to it, I'm like,
why.
I think of you, and I'm like, she's not here.
I don't remember that one.
I do. She used to say,
but we were like, I was told
cackle.
But why would you not do that?
It's rude. It's deemed as rude.
It was deemed as rude. You just don't walk down the road eating food.
No.
See, like these black things, yeah. We're like,
you don't. I still to this day.
Like I used to pick my lip, yeah. My mum was like, "You keep doing that, your lip's gonna stay like that. It's gonna get, it's gonna be fat forever."
Mum used to tell me that if I keep laughing
fat.
the way I do, I'm not gonna get married.
It's like these little things that they tell you, like, I don't know where it comes from in black culture, but it's like these.
They just make things up, because my mum will be like, "If you don't clean your room, your husband go and beat you when you get back."
It's like she wants to see one friend get licks from her husband, and that doesn't
like,
I think in black culture there's no point of reference.
It's just
like, whatever comes to mind.
She used to tell us this story about this guy. I don't think it's true.
What?
Where like he drowned, and there was one guy where he went up to the mountain, and he used to be wicked, and he used to, and then he was like herding goats or something, and he was coming down the mountain, and someone took him in his head because of his wickedness, and his wickedness catch up with him.
I think they just make it's just Chinese whispers.
That's what I'm saying. I feel like the guy probably did die, and then they just added in all the stories to go with it.
But I think the
best screenwriters in the world,
all of this stuff just causes you to go
It's like
introvert.
trauma. It's like
There's actually a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
Maybe we should start counseling session for
literally.
all West Indians and Africans.
Literally.
But it's true though. There's a lot of people that are struggling with things, and not everybody that has suicidal thoughts follow it through.
No.
You know, there is people that are going through things mentally, and you know the thoughts are there, but they don't, because of the culture that they're brought up in. You never feel like you can go talk about it.
But I think as well,
especially from that generation.
But I think it's also really powerful to be able to analyze your own thought processes, and I think that that's one of the most powerful coping mechanisms I think that anyone can have, because otherwise, if you're walking through life and you're constantly triggered and you don't know why, it's also very hard to communicate that effectively, and then the cycle just keeps on continuing. And I know with Jason, my husband, there's a lot of trauma that he went through growing up, and literally it's taken like 13 years to even just begin to peel back what that might be. And like I said something to him a while ago, and you know, it was only through a series of conversations with me, like prodding the bear, that he actually said, you know, when you do that, it triggers when I grew up, and you know, and he grew up in quite an abusive home, and that triggered the way that if you shout or even raise your voice, or what he deems as raising your voice, that triggers trauma because of how he was raised. But obviously, because I wasn't raised in a household where raising your voice is an issue or whatever, yes, if you'd get told off, but it wasn't like in a traumatic way. For me, I didn't have any connection or association with that would cause that. And it was only after that conversation where I was like, well, now that you've told me that, I can now better equip myself. That he's almost 50, he'd lived his whole life with the fact that anytime anyone raises their voice around him, it triggers him. And I was like, why didn't you, because he hadn't actually allowed himself to actually process the thought beyond that moment. So okay, I'm feeling really upset right now, I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now, why is that? And take it beyond that moment and actually analyze yourself and actually go, okay, why am I feeling triggered? Why am I feeling like this?
That's easier said than done, because I think, you know, there's some people that their way of coping is to live in this make-believe.
Yeah, but that's why I'm saying it, because for me, that's how I have maintained my mental health personally. I had to train myself to self-analyze myself.
But you've got to be prepared to be honest with yourself.
Exactly.
There is, you know, I know of people who they're into total denial, and they make believe this total other persona, and they live in this make-believe world, and they're totally in denial about them, what's wrong with them, their flaws, and even if you spoke to them, they would never open up. And that's a mental health problem right there, because you are totally in denial of your reality, but you put on, or you've developed this mentality that your life is something other than what it really is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You
so
know?
I think that for me, going back to mental health, I think that it's something that, you know, most likely is connected with some part of our childhood or some part of the way that we grow up, and it's really connected with really our coping mechanisms and our ability to cope. Because really, when we get to a place where we are displaying poor mental health, it's where we actually have not got the correct coping mechanisms in place. Because you can be angry, you can be sad, that all of these things are really valid and really important, that you are able to feel all of these things. Where your mental health falls down is where you're not able to effectively cope or have the correct coping mechanisms. And I think we should just talk about that for a minute, because I know each and every single one of us here have had to deal with our mental health in some aspects. What are some of the coping mechanisms? I'll start with you, Dom. Like, what are some of the effective coping mechanisms that you found that's really helped you? Like, I've just shared the fact that obviously for me, it's that self-analysis and being constantly aware of what is happening with my mental health. What has been some of those things for you?
I think for me, it's the time I felt the lowest is I think when I felt like I had no purpose, or I didn't know what my purpose was, or or when people around me were getting on with their lives or doing things, and I felt a point where you start thinking like my phone, like if your phone's not ringing, no one's thinking about me, no one cares about me. If it's my birthday, some people post like it's their birthday, another year, this and that. But I was never like, I wanted to see who really cared about me, or so I wouldn't post anything about my birthday. And then the whole day might go, and then some people might not even call you or things like that.
Yeah.
And then that just sends you, it's like you're almost looking for reasons to go to a darker place.
Yeah.
It's like, like I said with you, it's like a rabbit hole of depression. It's like, you ever been on YouTube and you go down a rabbit hole? It's like you keep just going down this hole where it's like you can get to a point where it's so low and it's so in yourself without seeking help or anyone around you that it's your thoughts just become what you listen to in a sense. So it's a dangerous place. And even like what you said when your friend called you, I remember calling people sometimes. It's like, can I call you back? I just and that moment, even just that little thing there. Can be like, no one's got time for me. Like no one's, and that can be a scary thing.
Yeah.
And I think when you have like people call you and they sound in a vulnerable space, always find time to speak to that person.
And that's really powerful.
Or stop what you're doing.
Yeah, like you can almost tell if it's out of someone's character or have you got a minute?
Yeah.
Even just that's someone's trying to open a door for you to be there for them. So I think whether it is that case or not, always make yourself available for the people that deem you as a safe space.
Yeah. And I think that's really powerful, because that's one of the things that I actually haven't really thought about it properly till now, but I will always answer the phone even if I'm busy, even to say like I always check to make sure you're okay. Then I'll be like, all right, when I realize that like actually like you're just calling me for foolishness, right? Can I call you back?
Of course,
but I always answer the phone initially. I've never answered my phone and automatically said, can I call you back?
Yeah, but there's a lot of people.
But there's a lot of people that do, and I think that that's a really, really powerful thing to bring out here. Like how many people don't like take the time to even. That might be the breaking point for someone.
And you got to live with that.
So what are some of the things that you found
before they made that final decision?
So what's some of the things that you found that's helped you to get to a place where you feel like, do you feel like you're in a place where you're healthy?
Yeah, 100%. I feel like
we should actually ask that shit. Actually,
the darkest
now you ask.
No, all seriousness. No, I'm definitely in a good place now. I think it's not for me right now, but I think being in the situation I am now, a lot of people can be in a dark place in terms of, I got married in 2018. We've got 3 kids, the 4th one on the way in 2024. It's hard sometimes, like having, you got kids. As a man, you got to manage the house. You got to, make sure you got the car, you got the house, you got the bills. You got to make sure, you got your overdraft. You're trying to bring the credit. It's a lot of things you got to deal with as a man. And at the same time, it's like I always have to find time for me. I think I was doing that very often in a space where I do that with gym as well. Yeah. For me, a gym is sometimes I even put in my headphones just to put noise cancellation on, so I don't hear anything, and I can just talk to myself sometimes or have thoughts or creative ideas and express things. I write things down in my notes. Yeah. But that's for me is my mental health, where I work on my outer body but also my inner body. I'm on the treadmill. I'm thinking about things, and that's where I can get excited about ideas I have and things like that. But getting out of the house, when I was at my lowest, I was in the house. I was, in my room, didn't want to see anyone. And I think just finding either creating a hobby or activity that can get you out of that space. Go for walks or see people, or even yesterday, like there's a homeless man. After I went to gym late last night, I went to Tesco to get some bits. like about 12 o'clock at night, and there's a homeless man outside, and he was just whether he needed some money to go find somewhere to sleep, but he said like some young kids like set him alight earlier in the day. Like some people bought him some clothes and some sleeping stuff, and they took all his stuff, like £200 worth of clothes and bedding and stuff. They took all his stuff. They set his feet alight when he was sitting there, like it's stamped on him and all that stuff. So his fingers like all dislocated and stuff. And whether that was the story or not, I want to be able to, like, whether you use the money to go buy whatever or you actually use it to go stay in the house. Yeah. If I can be that little tiny light in your day to help you, really whatever, then I'll be that. But as I said, I didn't have any. I don't carry cash like that. I said literally all I got is like Apple Pay. And he said he had a card. I was like, oh, okay. This guy got a card too. But it's like, I was like, all right, I'll transfer it to you. Yeah. So I took his details. I sent him the money. Yeah. Just so he can, if you can get home and you can end your day in peace. Yeah. And I could contribute to that. Yeah. It literally, even when I sent the money, on the reference, I said, God loves you. Like, Jesus loves you. Yeah. So whether you see that, when you check your statement or whatever you can, like, that's, if I can do one little thing, like, to help someone, then it doesn't take anything out of my day. You know what I mean? £10. Yes, whatever. I can do without it, but
I think that we had like a whole movement of be kind, you know, and random acts of kindness, and I feel like we need to bring that back, for like where we're just kind. Like I feel like we live in such an unkind society, you know, and
I think society as a whole now is pushing people more into that because people are so cruel and people are so unkind. I was reading a blog the other day, and it was just a cake decorating blog, but people were so hateful. I'm like,
those comments,
what is wrong with you?
It's just so
whether
horrible.
you agree or not, you don't have to be mean. You don't have
but
to.
You gotta think those
be
people
unkind.
as well could be in that state. They're trying to spew what they feel inside.
Someone's got their cake business. They're sharing their skills and their techniques, and out of that, someone has to create this monster and start being ugly.
So there's two types of depression for me. I see people that are depressed and they seem happy, but those people are expressing how they want to receive love as well. And then there's people that are depressed and it's inverted, but they online they might spew hatred because they want people to feel how they feel.
And I think you know, we can talk about our own mental health, but I think it's that awareness, like you were talking about, being aware of those around you. I remember years ago, I can't remember if you were with me or it was Danny, but I took a group of girls. We went to Portugal. It was a group of girls I was mentoring. Were you there?
Yes.
And, you know, there was a lot of us. I remember hiring a bus, or a bus had been booked for us that had no brakes, which we ended up giving back. But I remember at the airport when we were leaving Portugal and we were checking in, and the lady checking us in was really rude. And, you know, the immediate reaction was to be rude back. And this is where we can be more aware. Instead of reacting to that person, like you said, people are, it's a positive or negative, but you know, something's going on. And this woman was just being really nasty. This is like early in the morning. And I just took a moment to stop and just step back from what she was presenting to me and just look at her. And at that moment, I just caught a whiff of alcohol. And I thought, if you're drinking and you smell like you're drunk already, first thing in the morning, within seconds, I'm like, this woman's got problems. And instead of reacting to her rudeness, I started talking to her really nicely. And I showed kindness. And she immediately switched. And I want to say, you know, on top of what Dominic just shared, is that as women, you know, we can get so caught up that, I'm stressed, I've had the kids all day, I've been doing the school run, I've been doing all of this stuff, husband comes home and, you know, bam, we offload on them. And I think as a wife, I know for me, I wanted to be that wife that helps to alleviate pressure. I always wanted to be that wife that is mindful of what burdens my husband is carrying and being able to shoulder burdens. And there's a lot of times as wives, you know, we can think about just this is what I'm going through. This is the kind of day I've had. And, vice versa. It works both ways.
Yeah.
And we don't think about what the other person's day's been like. And I say that to say, I raised the 4 kids, and as much as possible, I did my side in carrying the weight of that, and not always like, as soon as your dad comes home, I'm offloading everything on him, and just giving our men space, because I wouldn't want to be a man, because I wouldn't want to be the main responsible person for this family.
In saying that, there's a lot of households where the woman's carrying
I understand that, but I just want to I just want to balance that, because I see that with a lot of women.
Even with that, it comes with mental health.
But when
that's what I was going to say.
when you look at the statistics, and you look at how many men commit suicide, you look at how many. I remember
it's mainly financial issues.
It's mainly the pressure.
From what I saw,
and I remember seeing this this family that were on holiday in Spain or something years ago, and it was in the newspapers, and I think the wife just wanted out of the marriage. They were on holiday, and his way of coping was to jump out of the multi-story apartment building with the children. He thought, if she's going to leave me, let me just take my life and theirs, and it was that pressure, and it's just being, I think, just let's be more mindful. Yes, we can deal with what we're going through, open up, talk, find someone to talk to, but also be mindful of the people around us, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your teenagers, the kids in your home. And that's why, for me, I've always liked family dinners around the table, because you get to look at each other, you get to see and learn to read, because we live in a world today where we don't see. We don't see. I watch that sometimes. You see a homeless person sitting there. You saw that person, but how many people walked past that man and didn't see him? We don't look today. We're a generation that's on our phone. You watch how many times you're walking through the mall, and people walk right into you because they're not looking. They're looking at their phones. And I think we need to put the phone away, and we need to learn to look at people's faces. We need to learn to take the time. You're at the checkout. Don't be on your phone. Learn to look, even if it's to give that person that the checkout a smile. You have no. I remember one time I went into a card shop, and the girl serving me, I just read her in minutes, because she had a short sleeve on, but she had all these cuts up her arm, and I knew she was somebody. She's got problems. She had all these scars from all these cuts that she'd been making up her arm, and just stepping back and looking at that person, and you see for a moment, this is somebody that's struggling with something, and just like you said, you sent him some money, but you put Jesus loves you, which adds something into his life. That maybe he'll find Jesus somewhere, which will tremendously transform his life. But I think, part of mental health is, yes, we can focus on our own, but let's not just be introverted with this, or I'm going through this is what I'm feeling. But how about being mindful of other people? Because if I'm feeling this way, somebody else must be.
And I think on the other side of that, I think that as women, we need to speak up when we're not okay. Because
both
I think
men and women.
Youth, but I think that for a lot of women that I speak to, and a lot of mothers, they think that they have to just stay on this hamster wheel, and they just have to keep going, and a lot of the times they're not okay. And I know for me, I was doing it all. My husband was not here. I was mum, I was dad, I was nurse, I was cook, I was Uber, and there was never a shut off. And I remember saying to my husband, because also when you are a strong woman, and when you are someone that seems very capable, the tendency can also be where you're good. You know, and I remember that was constantly like my husband saying, you're good, like. And I remember I had to say to
people generally do that, because I remember carrying all of those things myself. You're pastor, you're running, you're doing all of this, and no one everyone assumes that you're fine,
Yeah.
and no one asks, no one checks on you. We make a lot of
Well,
assumptions.
no, I would say like, no, I need help, and no, you're fine, you're good. And I think that when there's a lot of very strong women that do earn good money, that do contribute to the households, that do work the same, if not more, than their husbands, that are putting the kids to bed every night, that are running because not every man runs the finances in the home. And I think that for me, it was to the point where my husband was in a different country. I was literally constantly going, and I had to literally turn around to him and say, when I say I'm not good, I'm not good. And I had to really spell it out to him. This is impacting my mental health. I'm not tapping out. Like, I'm not taking a moment to myself. And I think it's really, really important that you keep saying it till it's heard. Because some people will allow you to keep going regardless of whatever. And I think it's really, the signs are there. And because I have a history of coming from that, I know when to say it loud. I'm not okay. And I think male, female, young person, older person, I think that we've got to learn to say I'm not okay. And that might be that you need an afternoon off. It might mean that you need to go out with your friends for the evening or whatever, or go to the gym, or go for a walk, or do something.
The gym was a major part of managing my self-management. Like Dominic said, there's something that's released in your body when you work out. And for me, the gym was somewhere, if you remember, I was going like 2-3 hours, I'd be in the gym, because that was just, it released a lot of things, and it just gave me a coping mechanism to help me go through things. But I just want to say, there are also, within ministry, just from working with different people over time, that it's another area where people, especially women in ministry, are suffering. And it's an environment where there's no one you can trust to go and talk to. So there's a lot of people, just because you're in church and you're a Christian, it doesn't mean you've got it all together, and it doesn't mean you're coping. And there's a lot of Christian women in ministry that are not coping well. And I would say find somebody that you can go and talk to, because find somebody that you can trust, that you can go and talk to. But there is that stigma. But
I also think that, like, going back to what Dominic's saying earlier, that we also need to stop this culture of dehumanizing people, whether they be a celebrity, whether they be a pastor. Like, I watch things unfold. There's a pastor and his wife in Australia that have been put through hell recently, or not so recently, and for me, my heart is just like, how can people be so cruel? How can we be so bloodthirsty?
They're human.
And they're human.
They are
and
human.
And I think that even when people have genuinely messed up, where they've genuinely missed the mark, like, where's our humanity? Like, where is our love? Like, it takes so little from us, but has such an effect when we're kind. And I think with pastors' wives, with pastors' families, with pastors, with pastors' kids.
Several years ago, there was a pastor that you also know, that in South Africa, who committed suicide. He went in his garage. He had young children.
Youth pastor,
It was your youth pastor. He went in the garage and put the fumes in his car, and he killed himself. This is somebody that was going through something, and no one saw it. And just because you're a minister, it doesn't mean or you're a Christian, it doesn't mean that you don't have feelings. Ministers, pastors are human beings too. We have feelings. And I see so many times where there's no one to talk to. There is no way you feel you can go, because it's just very fragmented. It's like you're over here, but it's a lonely place. It's a lonely call, and you don't feel that you can you can open up and say, I'm going through this, because you've got all these people that's depending on you to lead them, to be strong for them. And there isn't that there's no platform anywhere that you feel. And I want to say, if that's you and you can't find anyone else to talk to, contact me, reach out. I'll be happy to walk through with you, but that's something that's not readily available. There's no directory for pastors and pastors' wives to go and get help. And they're going through mental issues. You know, they're getting talked about, they're getting criticized. You know, maybe there's mistakes that's been made, you know, that is affecting your ministry, and you have no one to talk to, and you know, you're under persecution. But I want to say, there is always somebody that you can find that you can go and talk to.
I saw that divorces are 30% down in the past year.
Okay,
but
that's a good thing.
Well, this is where I think it might not be. Because the cost of living, I think a lot of people are staying in marriages.
It's £500 to get divorced.
Yeah,
it's £500
minimum, right?
But then it's not just £500. But now you've got to now find
kids,
2 incomes. You're paying 2 accommodations, 2 of everything. Now.
I don't think people have found new love for each other. I think people are just sort of. But I think the reason I'm mentioning this is because of mental health. I feel like a lot of people might be in these situations because the cost of, you know, I think people are putting the cost over their mental health in a sense of, I'll stay because, you know,
I can't afford to leave.
But then what's the detriment of that, and what's that going to cause? So I feel like that may be something that ends in a bit more of a negative situation, and it's more of a ripple effect of what we're in now in the recession. And
I think that there's so many reasons why people stay in marriages, isn't it? And I think that there's a lot of the time, and I think that a lot of times people will override their mental health for the sake of children, because you don't want to affect their mental health.
But in the same context,
that's always been. I remember your dad saying that, you know, his parents announced to them that they were going to divorce when he was a young boy, and he wanted to jump out the window because he thought, you know, as a child, immediately that had a knockback effect.
So they announced that and they stayed together.
So they said no, but they told he obviously.
That's more trauma than anything.
Well, he was told that they're going to. They're going to divorce. So he, as a child, that affected his mental health. That he
that's your world.
He found but he found a reason to say it must be because of me while they're doing this. You know, children have a way of adding it up and getting the numbers wrong. So he said he sat on his the window, and he was going to jump out the window as a child because he thought it was his fault, his parents. So that obviously
but to even have that thought as a child is
but children, that's the
crazy.
thing.
Children are
it can affect children.
There's young children that's getting bullied in
that's
school.
a reality. Bullying is an insane thing, but there's children have mental health problems
for not having
as
a
well.
I think that you need to start the conversation. I think it's so vital that your kids are talking to you on a regular basis.
Don't be so ignorant or old-fashioned that your kids can't talk to you. And, you know, don't rebuke them if they tell you stuff and call it nonsense. Listen to them genuinely, because kids have you know, we see them as children and we don't think they have problems,
they do.
But they do, you know, from being at school, you know, the bullying, and bullying starts so early, and with social media, with the phones, and with all the things, the access
it's
to
worse
them,
than what it was
it's a lot worse, because
something goes on, people post you online and you become you don't know who's seeing this, and it plays with your head.
Well, I think the reality is, if most parents are honest, they don't have a touch point with their children at least once a day. You know, a lot of kids make their own way home from school. By the time their parents come home, they're busy doing something else. The kids put themselves to bed. There's no real touch point where I intentionally and purposely take the time out to say. So when I pick my kids up from school, the first question I ask them is, what was your favorite part of the day, and what was your least favorite part of the day, and why? That's my question that I've since they were young, and to the point where now it's like they wait. If I don't pick them up, like the minute they see me, they're and Jason's like, we were just in the car. Why didn't you tell me any of these things? But it's where they're so used to
you asking.
This is I need to offload my day to my mom.
Yeah.
And so he's like, but we just drove 20 minutes and you didn't tell me any of these things. Or they'll be like, Daddy, can you call mum? So they've got me on speakerphone and they're like, Mummy, guess what? But it's where they've been programmed. And that's why for me, picking my kids up from school is such a vital part of my routine, and the reason why I will do everything within my power to always make sure I'm the first person they see, because there's something about when kids first get out of school, they can't hide that. Those first few moments, they can't hide it, and I can see by your eyes something's happened or something hasn't. Like there's been instances where I remember with Maya in her old school, where from the moment I picked her up, we asked the same question every day. How was your day? What was your favorite thing? What was your least favorite thing? As we're crossing the road, oh, a girl touched me today. We circled all the way back. You know, it was dealt with right there and then. But also my kids have always known that I'm going to fight for you all the way to the end. And one of the things that happened when in that situation is the teacher leaned down to Maya and she said, why didn't you tell me that you've been in school all day? And in front of Maya, I said to her, don't question my child as to who she told and why she told and where she told. She's told it. And she told it to the person she felt safest with. Don't ever address my child again and ask her why or why she didn't. This is your issue. I want to know what you're going to do with it. And I said that in front of her because I wanted it to know your voice. I've got you. Like you, even if you don't feel safe with any of these teachers, if any of these friends, whatever, when you get to your mom, you know that's your stop. Even if you've had to carry it the whole day, carry it. The minute you get to your mom, your mom's gonna come like a hurricane to whoever's disrupted.
But again,
that.
you know, that's something with culture that we didn't have that. You know, you couldn't go. You know, you have kids that were abused, that were getting sexually abused, but they didn't have that safe place because there wasn't that parent that would believe them. You know, it was like, you know, don't, because they didn't want to cope with it. They didn't want to deal with it. So it was like you're lying or you felt you couldn't ask. I don't know if you remember that time when Ashley was being bullied. And I remember there was a time we were all in the back garden having a barbecue and he wouldn't get out the car. And I remember going round to the car to get him out and just trying to open him up to what happened. And it took us ages, you know, managed to get him in the back garden, and the way our family is, we were like, until we got to get the information.
You are going to tell us by force.
You know, but it's so important, that persistence. Because then you get to find out this is what's happening. This is what the story is.
It's really important where we as parents don't also leave our children in situations
in that environment
that are stripping them of their mental health. Listen, I will pull you out that school.
Well, we did.
Before
you know,
can
that was
say, but that's the thing. A lot of parents, because
I don't care
if
how
we're
good
honest,
the school is.
no, exactly. But if we're honest, it's a mission, isn't it, to find a new school to
but
go
if
and
your
replace
child
them,
if there are people in that school that's bullying your child, I would rather, because you know, to try and rely on the school to resolve it, it doesn't usually happen, because you know, outside of the classroom those kids can lay wait them on a train station, on the road. And so, you know,
but I think in those situations you need to let them know they belong to someone. Like I've always told Maya and Kayla, listen, let them know you got people. Let them know you belong to somebody. You're not no island. You're not by yourself. Like, you belong to someone. And I think in those instances, it's really, really important, because we have a society where we're working all the time. We don't have time for our kids anymore. And we have to get back, because mental health is a real thing.
From the time you were bullied, the whole clan showed up.
Literally, because
we were literally
but what you were communicating to that girl is she belongs to someone. So you come for her. There's a whole lot of other people waiting for you. There's a tribe that will literally make your life not very pleasurable. Let's just put it that way. And so I think it's really, really important that I speak as a parent, that we're really proactive and intentional with our children's mental health. Don't leave them with people just so that you can go out. Like, don't just, like, I've had so many young people, working with young people for over 30 years, where it was the female nanny. This is a girl, you know, this is people that you think never, like, what, like,
well, one of my friends, it was the church mother.
Yeah,
who used to babysit her kids, the church mother.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
An elderly woman in the church.
This is what I'm saying.
Abusing, and the mental, I got to see the girl, like, let it out as a grown woman that was married with children, at a session that we were having as in a pastor's group, and the scream that came out of her, that was tormenting her her whole life into adulthood, and that was the first time her mother heard what had happened to her, because she obviously didn't feel she could go talk to her mum about it, so she carried that that abuse and that mental torment for the longest time.
Well, I was speaking to one of my friends. I know we've got to wrap up, but like, we were speaking to one of my friends, and she was saying that she had lunch with somebody who had a string of issues, and, you know, she was obviously trying to be there for that person. And she said, I need to call my mum and say thank you. Because she was like, growing up, you grow up strict and you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to go there, you know. But she goes, what she actually did was protect my health mentally. She protected me and saved me from so much. And I think that as parents, we've got a generation that we want to be friends, and, you know, we want to be very liberal and we want to be very free. But the reality is, when we're handing kids phones before they're mentally able to cope with what's coming through that device, when we are allowing them onto social media when they're not ready to be in that space, when we're letting them watch anything and everything on YouTube and TV, it is affecting this generation's mental health. And there has to be someone that stands up and takes responsibility for it. These kids cannot buy themselves their own devices. They cannot buy themselves their own phones. They cannot access these things unless we allow it. So we've got to be proactive. My kids are like, you read all my messages. Of course I do. What do you think? You're 10 and 11 years old. You think you've got privacy? No, that's not happening. You're not going to be cyberbullied, and I don't know about it, and I find out because you've taken your own life. No, it's not happening. I'm going to read all your messages. You better know. So think about that when you're responding to your friends and what they're responding to you, because you know your mom's going to read it later on that evening. And that's the thing. People are like, oh, you shouldn't do that, like that. Yes, you've got to protect our kids' mental health. I always
say this, our kids rely on us to protect them. Your children rely on you to protect them. If you're not protecting them, who is? If as parents we're not the main protectors of our children, who's going to protect them? And I think, you know, like Sarah said, she picks her kids up from school. Even if you are not able to because you're at work, you can't pick up your kids from school. When you get home, make that space every day. Even if it's 10 minutes, you make that space to find out where they're at and how their mental health is. You create that. Whatever it is that you can juggle around, whatever it is you need to do, should be on the priority list of what you're doing that evening when you get home from work. Yes, you've been at work all day yourself, but it's your responsibility. And knowing what I know now, there's a lot of things that I would do different. But as we become more aware of mental health, it's important that we create the time to find out how our kids are doing mentally. And they're not going to open up to you immediately, especially if you haven't been doing it. It takes time and trust. You've got to build the relationship.
It's got to be something that if you're not doing it already, I suggest you do it straight away.
It's very hard to start at like 15, 16 when you haven't been doing that. It can still be done, but it's a lot easier if you do it from the onset. It's going to take time to build because
you've not built that trust. But I would say whatever age they are, even if they've left school, make that connection and create that. I don't think it's ever too late to build that relationship and to check on your family. Even it doesn't have to just be your kids. Just check on your family.
Even when they're adults.
Check on them.
You check on them, and because it's throughout every stage of your life there's going to be challenges that you go through. So I think it's whether it's your family or your friends, surround yourself with people that they want to see you do well, or they care about your well-being and your mental health. I think it's important to have those people around you, or create that space if you don't have that already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we've I think we've run out of time, but I would just say, as this is Mental Health Month, I just want to encourage you to make that space, create the chat. With your family, with friends, create the chat. Let's not just say, it's Mental Health Month, but create some conversations. Get together with some friends.
I like what Dominic said. Like, how's your mental health?
It's just it might seem like such a simple question, but create not in like a jokey scenario, like where have it with a space where you can actually ask that question and they feel comfortable to answer that in a genuine space. And I think because we mentioned suicide, I want to give a number just in case anyone still actually feels suicidal. You can contact 116 123. There's people you can speak to. If you do want to have conversations with us, you can contact us on our Instagram, which will be attached in the corner. And just there's people you can speak to, and there's people that'll be happy to listen to.
Yeah. So happy mental health, guys. Keep it healthy.
Mental health,
watch out for each other, and
be kind.
Be kind. Be aware of those around you. See them. Make sure you see them. See your husband. See your children. See your friends. Actually see them. Look into their face and check on them on a regular basis.
Remember, suicide and depression doesn't always have a look to it.
There's no signs.
Isn't it? Sometimes there's no signs whatsoever. So don't presume. Always check in, because there's something powerful about sometimes just someone. It just takes one person asking the right question to snap someone back out of what it is that they're going through.
Appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.